Hashtag Me Too. I have much to say about hashtag Me Too and the current moral panic. And as always, this is purely my opinion based on my experience. I've been on all sides of this issue, and to a large degree, child molestation and sexual abuse and the way they were mishandled are behind what destroyed my familial relationships. My ex-brother-in-law did something to my former friend, the porn star, that if it happened now would have cost him dearly. Major stars have lost their careers over less. I'm sure the same people who wrote me off as crazy have had long debates over Matt Lauer and Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein and how awful they were. But that was then, and this is now. My idiot stepfather was kind of a bully. And narcissistic mom abdicated all authority to this man, a stranger. And I was raised to render unto him blind obedience. And he taught Sunday school, so he must have been a good person. "Oh, your mother must never know about this," said the authority figure my mother installed over me. Mom's response was that I must have wanted it on some level. These people have no idea how much the guilt and shame affected me, but now I have a visceral knowledge of how these things happen and how a kid can be messed up and how easy it is to screw up a kid. Hashtag me too. My younger half-brother was molested, and he said his experience was a lot like the late Corey Haim. Growing up, he displayed a lot of sexually inappropriate behavior. It was obvious he had issues. Workaholic dad and his mom got him into therapy, but for whatever reason, he wouldn't talk. As he grew older, he chose to self-medicate, and he medicated himself into a full-blown opiate addiction. He stole morphine pills from his stepfather. He expressed suicidal ideation, and then he cut off all his friends and his family. And his friends were reaching out to me to see if I had heard from him. No, I was one of the first on his shit list. When we all went over to his house, his mom told us that he was in therapy for the drug addiction. But I've never heard of drug treatment that excludes the entire family. I paid for a session with an addiction specialist just to get her take on the situation and how his mom and stepfather were handling it. And she told me there is no treatment, and that if he were in treatment, he would want the family around. He would want their support. He would want the positive strokes. And that's what I thought. I know a lot about the therapeutic process. Too much, apparently, which made me a troublemaker and a convenient scapegoat. But all I know is if little brother were in a coma in the hospital, his mom and stepfather would have demanded that we come see him and talk to him to help bring him back. So how do people become narcissists? Is it nature or nurture? I can see how my mother became a narcissist because her own mother was very narcissistic. And Mom's older brother passed away at a very young age, and her parents never got over the loss. So consequently, my mother was alternately smothered and neglected growing up. So she was at the center of her universe. And that's how it's always been and always will be, because she has no capacity to see things any other way. So let's look at Kevin Spacey. According to his brother Randall Fowler, their father was an abusive Nazi who terrorized the whole family. Randall says their father raped him from the age of 14 on, and that he tried to protect Kevin, but he didn't know how badly Kevin might have been abused. But the picture painted of their father looks a lot like how Kevin has been exposed to be. It's like if you're raised to provide sexual gratification at a moment's notice, when that's your normal, that's how life is, for teenagers, then it's logical and should come as no surprise that he would go on to do unto others what had been done to him. That he should have an expectation that others would be compliant and responsive to his sexual demands. I mean, isn't that elementary? That we're being programmed as we're being raised. Now, I'm not making excuses for him. What he did was wrong, just as what his father did was incredibly wrong. And perhaps the insanity of his home life as compared with the world outside was too much for him to deal with. That would explain why he never got help. The spirit of abuse is a dark and negative energy, a virtual black goo that infects the victim, that infests the victim. Now it is inside you and there is no antidote. I mean, yeah, you can get some therapy and you can learn to understand what happened and you can learn to live with it. You can learn what is you and what is not you, but you will never get your innocence back. You now live in a world where these things happen once it's happened to you. Now, when it happened to me, the only way I could handle the guilt and shame was to internalize it. My psyche split, and I had a new persona who reveled in the taboo. And I became a sexual harasser, a sex addict, a liar, and a cheat. The evil done unto me was like a virus that seeks to replicate itself. And you can see that in the compulsive nature of the perpetrator's actions. Blatant, entitled, foolishness and stupidity. Flying in the face of decorum and labor regulations. Once a frat boy, always a frat boy. Even long after college fraternities are being closed down for unlawful hazing and sexual improprieties. So where does this evil come from? This evil has always been around since time immemorial. It's the age-old battle between good and evil. And most of these situations we're hearing about are just more sociopaths running amok, propped up and protected by their network of flying monkeys. And I know for a fact how hard it is to come forward regarding my ex-brother-in-law. I wanted to warn my community that we had a predator in our midst. Someone that hubby and I had ourselves brought into the fold. Someone that most of said community didn't even like at the time. And after seeing enough examples of predatory behavior from him, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. But no! Boom! Everyone wrote me off as crazy and threw me under the bus. So why would anyone want to come forward and risk their careers or their status? I lost all my friends and half my family over this, and spent another whole year living in hell until we were able to move away. And then ex-brother-in-law moved into the building where we had lived, having finally succeeded in taking over what had been our life. It's really super creepy. He was truly a parasite. I am sure that none of these former friends see any parallels between the headlines and what happened here. I'm sure that none of these people even stop for a second after railing about Harvey Weinstein or Matt Lauer to think, maybe After Arts had a point. Maybe so-and-so really is a predator. But that's besides the point. The point is that abuse does not exist in a vacuum, and that abuse is doled out by people who have no empathy, no conscience. They're narcissists, who have expectations for gratification, sexual or otherwise. People who are driven by compulsion, and compulsions, in my opinion and my experience, are born out of trauma. They are dark and negative energies, the virtual black goo that infects and infests. And the societal structure that we have grown accustomed to was developed by the narcissists, for the narcissists, to preserve them in their respective centers of power, be it business, media, or politics. Their standard operating procedures are always the same. And 2017 was the year where the structures really started breaking down. We need to be vigilant and aware that a post #MeToo world is not manipulated by the narcissists and their flying monkeys to maintain their advantage, to continue their tactics of appealing to our better angels, to weaponize our empathy against our own best interests, and our frustrations into the rule of the mob. We need due process in the rule of law. We need transparency. We need to understand human nature, warts and all. We need to understand the cycle of abuse in order to end the cycle of abuse. We need to spread awareness of the narcissist and narcissistic abuse.